What does it mean when you say, leave your ego at the door? Hello, welcome back. Welcome to a new Traders Improve podcast. And, we all have heard probably the expression that leave your ego at the door, or that you need to leave your ego at the door when it comes to trading or in other areas maybe. But what does it mean? And I want to talk a little bit about those concepts in this week's episode or in today's. So what does it actually mean when people say leave your ego at the door when you're trading? Usually people mean that you should not be greedy as a trader, you should not be reckless, you should not try to prove something or try to prove that you are right. And all of those things and many other things probably describe what this means. So you just should follow the rules and not do anything emotionally driven. And I had the idea to talk about this topic because I have just read and reread the book New Earth from Eckhart Tolle, Tolle. And I think this is one of the books that could really make a big difference in someone else's life. I've read it twice within the last 4 weeks. I really think it's fascinating, and I really think this will have or could have a huge impact on many people's lives. And he talks about two things in general. One is he talks about the ego, and then he also talks about the concept of now. Let's start with the ego. So what is the ego? When what Tolle says is that's the voice in our heads. We all probably have, or some more, some less, have the experience to hear and to be aware more or less of the voice in our head that is always talking, that is narrating the world, and that is pretty much the ego. It judges and compares you to other people. It always tries to assess whenever you meet someone, or even when you just walk down the street, you look at people and then unconsciously, more often than not, you just start talking in your mind about this person. You try to see, okay, what is his status? Are you better than him? Are you superior over him? And it just tries to find your place within the world, often not in a very nice and friendly way, because it always tries to put you above the people, and it always tries to reason why you are superior. And that's very, very common. It narrates the world, and why does it do that? So when you walk down the street, for example, you always you look around and you say, oh, there's a car, there's a dog, there's a woman. You don't need to actually repeat those things in your mind because you see them with your eyes, but the ego is just narrating what you see. And obviously the ego and the voice, it can never narrate everything that you see, because just look wherever you are, look outside the window and you probably see hundreds or thousands of different things, but this would be way, way, way too much for our conscious mind to process everything. So this happens unconsciously, and the ego just tries to narrate certain things. Why does it do that? Because it wants to provide some sense of security. If you really think about it, that how many things are happening around you, thousands and thousands of things, most of them you are not even aware of, that would probably drive a lot of people crazy. And so this narration has the goal also to provide a sense of security, but it is a false sense of security, because you only are aware of a very, very small fraction of what is actually happening. And also, what does the ego do? It slaps a label on everything to make it fit into your worldview. That's very, very common as well. So I started doing this self-development work a while back, many years actually, but only in the recent years I've started to really understand, or trying to understand and getting more aware of what is actually happening in our minds, because I find it super, super fascinating. And in the beginning, not only fascinating, but really shocking. When you start listening to the voice in your head, because it's often not very friendly, it's often not really supportive, it tends to be often negative. And I started to realize that on myself, and then I had the urge to try to find out why is that happening, and I started reading other books. And it wasn't really until the last year where I started reading Michael Singer's book, and I went to the Von Tharp seminar, and now Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now and the New Earth, that I really have started to pay a lot of attention to the voice in our heads, or in my head at least. I'm not sure what the voice in your head says, but I hope it's a little bit better than mine. But I'm sure that many people will relate to that. And first step, you need to obviously start paying attention to it. Most people, as many of those guys say, also Dispenser says that you are mostly running on autopilot and you're not even paying attention to the voice in our head. But once you start paying attention to it, you will understand, or you start to notice certain patterns, especially the judging and judging of other people, comparing yourself to other people, narrating the world, or slapping labels on things around you. This is something that you will probably be able to be aware of and notice dozens and hundreds of times during the day. And it's really interesting to see once you step back and once you don't identify yourself with the voice in your head, but you just start observing this voice. You'll catch yourselves time and time again of how your thoughts drift into a certain direction when you meet someone, and then you suddenly start judging them and just comparing yourself to him. You look at, oh, what watch is he wearing? What car is he driving? Is my car better than his? Are his clothes better than mine? What he says, is it smarter than what I could say? And you try to just fit in, or try to assess yourself with, or compare and try to assess where you fit in this world. It's really, really fascinating once you start paying attention to this voice in our heads. And why do we have that? Well, there are obviously many, many theories and ideas, but probably the most on a basic level is that it actually wants to protect us, and it wants us to feel good. It wants to just protect us from feeling hurt or feeling bad or feeling inferior. It wants to help us feel superior by just creating false narratives and just trying to create false ideas in our heads. It tries to just analyze your role in the world, but it does not think very long term. It always thinks short term. It doesn't have this concept of delayed gratification. Everything that the voice in our head is trying to do is just get satisfaction right now at this very moment, and so it always, well, who doesn't know that if you wanted to diet more and exercise more and watch your diet, but then the voice in your head starts talking, but you have been such a good boy this week, just go to McDonald's, eat the burger, eat the french fries, it doesn't matter, just grab the cake and reward yourself, you've been working so hard. And this is the voice in our head as well. It's always tries to get us into some type of mess because it doesn't think long term. And in trading, this happens many, many times as well, where you don't think about the long term, but you listen to the voice in your head and it comes up and it wants to get the quick fix. It just wants to feel good right now. So it says, oh, take the trade, it's about to leave, take a bigger risk because you could make so much money. Oh, but this guy on Twitter said something, maybe he doesn't know, he knows something that you don't know. And those is all this voice in our heads, and it's really, really fascinating to start paying attention to it. Something that Eckhart Tolle also said in the book, which I find very interesting, is that there are two ways to be unhappy. First, you get what you want, and second, you don't get what you want. So pretty much, basically, you're always unhappy. And this is kind of true because when you get what you want, you realize that it doesn't provide this everlasting feeling of happiness that you thought it would, whatever this might be. When I bought a new car or when I bought my Rolex, I always thought, wow, when I get those things, or when I move to this crazy apartment in Frankfurt, when I get those things, I will be happy forever. I don't need anything else in my life. And then you realize, that's not really it. That's not going to change my life forever. Or when I moved to Thailand, or when I moved back here, or when I made this nice vacation, those are all just the quick fixes, and it won't provide this everlasting happiness. So when you get what you want, that's often a very sure way of feeling unhappy. But when you don't get what you want, obviously that's also easily to see how this makes you unhappy, because, well, obviously you didn't get what you want. You either get upset, you get angry, or you get sad. So very, very interesting quote. The other concept that he is often referring to, he wrote a whole book on the power of now, but the concept of now, and I find this really, really fascinating as well. I try to incorporate into my life as much as possible. And he always keeps saying, everything is now. there's nothing else but the now. All you ever have is now. This very moment right now. He says that the future is not real, and when it arrives, it's just another moment of now. You maybe think, okay, what's going to happen in 10 years? But it doesn't really matter because, well, once the future arrives, it's another moment of now. The future is always a state where, or is often a state where we think everything will be great, and we often sacrifice our present life or the whole life for some people to work towards an unknown paradise in the future that we made up. And I think this is very true. Many people, they sacrifice sometimes even their whole life because they always have this dream, wow, when I make $1 million, then I can finally retire, travel the world or whatever. And then they get there and they realize, okay, it's not possible, or it's not what they wanted. And many people end up sacrificing all their lives because of some imagined paradise or future moment that suddenly will somehow change their life. But what he says, and what is really makes sense, is that to have a great future, all you need to do is make the best possible now moment. So you need to create the best now that you can. And this will naturally take care of your life. And if you just be in the now, and right now you just try to make the best decision, you try to just enjoy everything as much as you can, just be present and just take care of the present moment. Whatever is coming in front of you, this is what you have to deal with. This is your life. It's not what may happen in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or next week. It doesn't really matter too much. Obviously, there is some planning to do, but the planning always happens in the now as well. It's not, you cannot plan for 10 years or even for the next week. Everything you need to do is in the now, and that's the only thing that we can really control in life. That's the only thing we have control of. And this is pretty much our life. Our life is now. And this is really an interesting concept that you need to wrap your head around. The past, he said, is also not real, and it makes sense. So when you think about the past, it is also happening in the now. And what happens is when we think about the past, often what happens is that we just create regrets in our mind, or you think how awesome it was, something that happened in the past, and you get maybe a little bit sad or frustrated that it has passed, and then you cannot get it back. So it's all happening in our minds. Whatever the life that you create is always happening in your minds, and this is really fascinating. Obviously, I'm not able to formulate it as nicely as Eckhart Tolle, and I'm not even trying to. But this is just the first podcast. I want to do more of those types of things because I think this will help many traders as well. Just get out of your head and just try to observe, first of all, that how the voice in your head is really expressing itself. That's the first step. You cannot suppress it. You cannot control it. You cannot really fight it, but what you can do is just first observe it. The next time you're interacting with someone, just look at your thoughts and look at how your thoughts are already trying to come up with a super clever answer to impress someone, or when you try to impress a random person on the street, you want to look good in front of others, or whatever it may be, or maybe you try to talk down to someone. This is all coming from the voice in your head. And it's really fascinating. Once you start paying attention to it, you start seeing the whole world a little bit differently, because everybody is living their life based on the voice that is talking in their mind. It's not really the person, it's just the voice. And once you understand that it's a separate thing, the voice in the head and the real person, you will start seeing the world in a very different way. And second of all, start understanding that you can't control the future. It should not even be your goal or your aim to do that, to have a great, awesome future. The only way to enjoy life and to have a great life is to really just make now the best moment possible. Whatever comes in front of you, just deal with it right now. Make it as good as possible. This is also how you look at problems a little bit in a different way. Problems are often misunderstood. And you need to start dealing with things. If you cannot deal with things, if there's nothing that you can do right in this moment, then it's not a problem. You should just put your focus on something else. And if you cannot do something about something right now, then it should not be something that you worry about. Always try to see, okay, what can you do right now about something? Does it help or does it not help? And then you move on. And in trading, we can use this knowledge as well, obviously. So you need to become aware of, first of all, what is happening in your mind. What are the thoughts that are rising about the market, about how you're interacting with the market? Start being aware of your emotions. Where do they actually come from? Why are they actually coming up right now? Maybe you closed out a loss and you want to get back because your ego says, oh, we want to get back to break even. We can't lose on a day. We need to be green every day of the week. And just observe how that feels. And then, second of all, you just ask yourself, okay, what is the best thing that I could do right now? Don't worry about next week, next month. Don't worry about if you can end the year green or the week green, or you can hit a certain performance goal. It doesn't matter. What matters is that just in this moment, you make the best possible decision that you can make about whatever is coming up, whether it's about trade planning, whether it's about entering a trade, managing a trade, or how you interact with your spouse, with your kid, with your coworker, with your boss. It's just about, if you want to have a great life, it's really, really about just making the best possible just making the best possible call right now. And this will hopefully make some sense. I try to formulate it as best as I could, but it's a really an abstract concept that you need to wrap your head around. And I will come back to this, talk about this every now and then, because I think it's one of the most important things that I certainly have come to know in the very, very recent past. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think, if this makes any sense at all, or if you don't want me to talk about this at all ever again. And yeah, you'll hear from me in the next podcast. Happy trading.